interview series with David Storobin from Law Offices of David Storobin. He's a criminal attorney, and we're here to talk about the issues at hand that we have for today. David also is a former politician. He represented a political party in New York City, correct?
Well, this district, yeah.
This district, perfect.
27th district.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're just going to go over some questions because elections are coming up. We're going to have a presidential election this year. We're going to have a mayoral election next year. But what other types of elections are there that people should get out to and vote? Are there any important deadlines this year except the presidential election, and anything that you can talk about the structure of the whole legislative branch, just to kind of give people a brief idea about it?
Okay, so people always think about the presidential elections because that's what's on the news, that's the big election. But most of the stuff that affects your life is actually not at that level. When you need a license, when you need police, when you need firemen, when you need whatever is it that you need, that's actually not the president, that's not even Congress. So just as we have the president and the Senate and the House at the federal level, we also have the same thing at the state level and almost the same thing at the city level. So at the state level, you have a governor, and then you have the state Senate, which is different than the United States Senate. That's the Senate in Albany. And then below it, you have the state assembly, which is kind of the same thing as the House of Representatives at the federal level. And then at the city level, you have the mayor, and instead of having two parliaments, you only have one. You have the city council. So everyone thinks of the federal elections as the only important ones. In fact, the local ones play much more of a role in your life, and you can actually have much more of an effect on it, and you can have a lot more contact with the local elected officials, because odds are, unless you've donated $500,000 or whatever to the president of the United States, you're not going to see the president of the United States. There's just no way for you to have any impact on the president of the United States. You can donate $500,000 or you can marry his daughter. Those are your two options in life. Short of that, what's your impact on the president of the United States? But as far as your local elected official, your assemblyman, your city councilman, your state senator, that's the guy who's sitting in the, who lives in the same building as you live. That's the guy who parks in the same parking lot where you park. So what needs to happen at some point is that you need to establish that contact, because you can go to that person and you can explain to that person, look, I have a problem with the fact that, I don't know, the roads are broken, or there's cars that are being broken into where I parked, or whatever it may be. And that person can actually affect things. When you have your small business, everyone goes, oh, I don't need anyone, I can support myself. Yeah, you can support yourself until somebody screws around with your license. So you run a restaurant, you need a liquor license, your application disappears for 9 months. Then your elected official picks up the phone, says, is there a problem? They go, oops, we forgot to process it. 24 hours later, you got your liquor license for your bar, or your restaurant. And that's true for pretty much anything else. And the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? And we see it. Nobody's actually, for instance, in favor of cutting the police departments. Nobody. I mean, it's like 16% of the population of crazy people who will demonstrate with those pussy hats, like those people are in favor. Outside of them, nobody's actually in favor of cutting the police. Guess who is actually able to get what they want? Those people, because they scream about it. Like anything else. Who wanted 75 genders or whatever is it that we have in New York City? Was anyone in favor of that? Did anyone wake up in the morning and go, man, my life would be a lot better if there was gifted gender, and if there was people of whatever gender experience, gender, something like that? Well, did anyone wake up and say that? No, you didn't actually want that. But there was 0.1% of the population that yelled about it, and they got what they wanted. And that's true for anyone. For whatever is it that you want. If you just go and you whine about it to your wife, to your husband, to whoever, you're going to get nothing. If you're going to go and harass your local assemblyman, I don't mean harass, I mean like lobby him, like in the most basic sense of the word lobby. I don't mean like you go and you get money and you go to Albany. I mean you catch him when he's parking his car and you just go like, dude, like what the hell? You will actually get something. And that needs to happen on our end.
So tell me, city council is something that we can vote on, right? Members
Everyone,
of the
yeah, of
city
course.
council. When is the next election?
Same day as the
Mayoral?
mayoral election. So there's 51 seats, and everyone has their own district. You get to vote on your own assemblyman. We have 48 Democrats and 3 Republicans right now. The 3 Republicans are allied with the halfway mentally stable Democrats. And then there's the other side, which kind of dominates the city council, which is insane. I know people will tell me that it's because you're Republican you're saying it, but no, I've had Democratic councilmen specifically tell me that they're actually insane. And these are people who work with them on a daily basis. It's people who, I mean, there's a lot of Democrats who are good Democrats, like Ed Koch, the mayor of New York, or Patrick Moynihan, the senator from New York. There were a lot of, or whoever, Senator Lautenberg from New Jersey. And to this day, there's a lot of decent Democrats. That said, in the city council, those Democrats are not in charge. And something needs to happen where it's going to not be the craziest people in New York City running the New York City. Because believe it or not, Bill de Blasio is the moderate in the New York City government, because the people who are working with Bill de Blasio are actually to the far left of Bill de Blasio. And he was a communist who went to fight for Nicaraguan communists in the 1980s. He volunteered to fight for Nicaraguan communists, and he is the moderate in the New York City government.
So same question for the Senate and Assembly. Next election, next November?
Okay, so those elections are in even years, as opposed to city council and mayoral election, which are in odd years. So Senate and Assembly, they're every 2 years. The governor is every 4 years. Up until 2018, Republicans were actually in the majority in the state Senate. And Governor Cuomo actually supported Republicans precisely because he didn't want all the insanity that we've seen the last couple of years to happen. Because he's a liberal, but he needed somebody to blame for saying, I cannot pass completely insane legislation because of the evil Republicans. So he kept on behind the scenes actually backing Republicans, but at some point, it was known in politics, and the more liberal parts of the state, not parts of the state, the more liberal organizations in the state went after the governor, and it became not feasible for him to kind of help the Republicans stay in the majority. But the reality is that a lot of Democrats are aware of the fact that a one-party system is not beneficial. Like if you're not looking to just win an election, if you're actually looking to do something positive for the state or city or United States, the idea that there should be only one side running everything is insane. You don't have a monopoly on good ideas on one side or the other side. And beyond that, there is also the issue that when everyone believes that the left will always win every fight, which is what's been happening, every politician is now trying to out-liberal the other one. So nobody wants to be the Joe Biden politician who will be told that, oh, whatever, 25 years ago you supported the crime bill. Nobody wants to be whoever else, saying that you believed in cutting taxes or whatever. Nobody wants to be that. You want to come up with the craziest liberal idea right now and run to the furthest left you can possibly run right now. Because in 5 years, you don't want somebody to say, well, you didn't support this. You want to be like, I was the first one to support, only giving one race the right to vote or something. I don't know, like whatever crazy idea liberals come up with, okay? So that's kind of why we need things to move. Somebody needs to get involved.
And that's why we created our group to basically give the people in the community a voice. Mm-hmm. Everybody's frustrated with what's going on. Everybody's scared for their families, their businesses. They're seeing a 180 shift in New York from many years ago when crime was low and everybody was prospering. So how can our group, our Facebook group, Standing Up for New York City, affect political change? What can we do as average citizens? Besides voting, obviously, but what can we do?
Well, voting is just not enough to make any difference. But it helps, but it's not going to be people actually need to get involved to some degree and to rebuild the Republican Party in general. I don't care if you're a moderate Democrat, like you still need there to be a two-party system, like I said before, which means that you would need to register people, which is what the left always does, which means that you would need to run for office yourself, which means that you would need to become a consultant, do something, go out and like proactively do something. Sitting there and whining never helped anyone. The left doesn't whine. The left goes out and does stuff. They'll do like, remember the 1960s when they said, by any means necessary, and that's been their way of operating for the last 60 years. They will achieve their purpose by any means necessary. So there's coronavirus, they tell you to stay home. Does anyone stay home? No, nobody stays home. Our side, we will sit there and whine about, your business got shut down, blah, blah, blah. And then you'll be like, okay, I lost so much money, and then you'll pay the rent for your business and keep it closed. Okay, that's our side. Their side will go out and do whatever. If they need to riot, they will riot. If they need to spread coronavirus, they will spread coronavirus. They will achieve their goal, whatever their goal is. Well, literally, whatever their goal is. If they needed to get help from the Soviet Union when it was communist, they went out and got. Ted Kennedy met with the Russian ambassador when he was running for president. And he asked the Russian ambassador for help. Now imagine if Trump did that.
That's collusion,
Imagine if Trump did that.
which was false.
Trump didn't do that, and he got accused of that.
Exactly.
Ted Kennedy actually did that and killed a woman, and nothing happened.
Speculative, yeah.
What's speculative? He killed a woman. No, it's incredible. The other side will do the most immoral things possible, and we are not willing to do anything to stand up for what we clearly have legal rights to do. So, your First Amendment rights do not get eliminated just because there's coronavirus. That's not how it works. There's no suspension of the United States Constitution. If somebody wants to pass an amendment to the Constitution, that's fine. Liberals will just decide to pretend like, something isn't in the Constitution when it's not, coronavirus or not, or they'll just suspend all types of rights, like First Amendment, Second Amendment, any other right. They'll just do it. You look at all the liberal businesses, Google, Facebook, they'll ban conservatives, no problem. Yesterday they banned Zero Hedge and the Federalist off of Google advertising. You'll never see a right-wing company do that. Like when Peter Thiel was running PayPal, there was no punishment of liberals. And at some point, we need to do something. There has to be a proportional mirror response that if liberals get conservatives fired, then conservative business owners, which is the vast majority of the business owners, do not hire liberals. It's a proportional response.
But then everybody will scream discrimination.
Wonderful. You're allowed to discriminate based on political party. By the way, don't say that it's because he's liberal. Literally just because that's what they do, by the way. They do that. That's what they say. They were like, okay, well, he disagrees with us, the Federalist. That's a very mainstream publication.
But didn't many people, teachers, politicians, newsmen or women got fired recently just because not supporting the whole movement?
Yeah, there was a Russian girl, woman, who worked for 14 years in the Gucci store right next to the Trump Tower. There's right next to it, there's a Gucci store. She worked there for 14 years. They were told to get on their knees and apologize to Black Lives Matter. She refused and she got fired on the spot. So if they get to do this,
bring action, some kind of action, because isn't it kind of like reverse discrimination?
The problem is that you have different standards based on what the reason for discrimination is, and the political party is not a protected class. So long as you have rational basis, any rational base, and rational base, like if they teach you in constitutional law, is like basically just say something and it will be rational basis. Like if you have something to say, that's rational basis. So it's not a protected class like gender or race or national origin would be. But the point is that this is what they do. They tell you get on your knees, you refuse, and you lose your job that you had for 14 years, and now your kids don't get to eat. And unless we have a proportional response, this is what will keep on happening.
We have a question also in regards to the bail reform.
Yes.
When it comes to it, who do you think is able to implement a petition to repeal the bail reform?
Well, the state government, because it's been a bit of a disaster. It's been a bit of a disaster for everyone because first off, they said that there's all sorts of discovery, meaning like the documents that need to be produced to the defense. Which, if before you got documents that were relevant to your clients, now you're just being bombarded with documents that have nothing to do with anything just because some politicians passed it. And so, if you go to any district attorney's office at 12 o'clock at night, you'll still see people there working on discovery and they're all upset about it. And then on the defense side, you're like, I don't want all of this crap. Like, there's some stuff that you need, but it's actually worse for you in defending a person because you cannot, like, you're being suffocated with all the documents. So whatever law that they passed is actually not helpful to the defense either. On the other hand, they are letting people out of jail for pretty much anything before coronavirus.
No, but
More than 100 crimes.
Well, it's got to be way more than
More
100.
than 100, yes.
But here's the thing with the whole new discovery law,
Yeah.
the police and the prosecution, the district attorneys have to produce within 15 days to the defense.
Yeah.
Any evidence?
All sorts of
Victims,
stuff.
witnesses, information, like that's
Yeah.
that's absurd.
A lot of people quit when
Yeah.
this got passed. I mean,
Well, like I said, if you go into the DA's office at 12 o'clock at night, you'll see a whole bunch of people still working. As far as bail, I saw a guy who was let out without bail. He participated in murder. He was the one who carried away the gun. The three of them showed up. One guy shot the person and ran it in one direction. The other guy picked up the gun, not picked up the gun, took the gun and ran it the other direction so that the cops cannot trace both, but it was caught on videotape. And I was watching it in court and the judge let him go. And to me, that's a bit ridiculous. I mean, they literally participated in murder and there's somebody who died, and he was let out. This is just routine now. Almost the Brooklyn Detention Center has been shut down completely. It doesn't exist. Like it exists physically, it just doesn't operate.
give you a criminal summons and then you go.
Well, no. Some people will go to like Rikers Island or whatever, like the boat or whatever. But by and large, they're letting so many people out that there's no need for all the jails that we had before. It's good for the
One of the
defense.
articles that came up, it was 250 people that were let out on bail reform, like
Or they got rearrested.
450 got rearrested, like they got rearrested 450 times, or something like that.
No, out of 450 that was let out, 250 got rearrested.
It's got to be way more than 450 that got let
That was
out.
an article, I don't know what.
Pretty sure that's a very conservative number.
Yeah, it's got to be way more than. I must have seen myself several dozen people let out. Like personally, I've
Most
seen it.
people were pissed off with Cuomo, doing the bail reform, without even like holding any kind of special,
Well, this is what happens when you have a moral panic because every liberal piece of legislature, on any, not just racial one by the way, is backed by claims of racism, sexism, homophobia, something. Well, if any disagreement becomes racism or whatever else, you cannot discuss the bill. Because any bill, like you have to work on it. You have to try to figure out that it's not completely insane in either direction, or just you cannot make a stupid mistake. So like I remember, I believe it was Rhode Island or Vermont, I think it was Rhode Island, where they passed a law that said that a pregnant woman cannot be prosecuted for murder. What they meant is that a woman cannot be prosecuted for having an abortion, which abortion was always illegal there. But God forbid somebody disagrees with anything or like calls them out on anything, like they'll immediately be accused of hating women. So the actual bill that was passed is that a pregnant woman cannot be guilty of murder. So like if you can get pregnant and go shoot all your enemies and you're good. So when somebody realized, after the bill was already law, somebody realized it and then the legislature went back and fixed it. But these are the kind of bills that would get passed because you're screaming racism and sexism at anyone who might have a legitimate disagreement with whatever you're saying.
All right, so now with all the anti-police sentiment and anti-police legislation, policies, like what are your thoughts on it? Like with defunding the police, like is there anything that we can do as a group to create political change? That's our goal, to create change.
At this point, we've lost so much ground. The only thing that I think could be done is to basically make some noise so that people who are the silent majority is not silent anymore. Not even not silent anymore, but not scared. Because there's the point of propaganda is not to convince someone that you're right. The point of propaganda is to make people feel like they're insane because nobody else agrees with them. So when you have the government or private organizations or like random liberals basically punishing people for what they're doing, everyone is shutting down. So you're sitting there all alone going, maybe I am the crazy one. Maybe everyone wants there not to be police. Maybe everyone wants the criminals to just roam the street. Maybe, what's his name, Chaz or Chop or whatever the hell they are today. Maybe that's what everyone wants because like you turn on the TV and that's what everyone wants. Like they tell you how wonderful all of that is. Like, and you when you're sitting there going, maybe I am the only crazy person in this. And there has to be something about people just openly saying that no, this is not what we want. They're just to support each other, and in the sense that people need to understand they're not the only crazy person around who still wants cops and doesn't want Chaz. As far as what you can do, like I said, you can
Make the voice heard.
run for office. Like that's.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm talking about our group standing up in New York City. What can
But
we
that's
do?
what the group can do. That's what a group can do. The group can pick out someone in there who will be able to fundraise, give a
Tatiana,
speech.
go ahead.
And you have to do it at every level because the lowest level is something called, I forget. But there's an electoral district. It's only a few hundred people who live there. And you need like 8 votes to win an election. Like some crazy small number. You don't need any money, nothing. You just go to like your family and a couple of people who live next to you and just tell them, look, just vote for me, like whenever. And it's inside the party, and you will get a seat inside. It's council committee. There we go. You will have a seat on the council committee that of the Republican or Democrat party. So then slightly above it is a district leader for Republicans or Democrats. Every assembly district has a male and a female leader. Okay, so which there's a lawsuit now actually to ban that because transgender people think that it's something transphobic to have male and female only. So we should have like 75 different district leaders in every assembly district. Okay, I mean, I don't think that most of the assembly districts actually have people of 75 genders, but that's what they're looking for. Literally right now as we speak. But in any event, there is still a male and a female seat, and like you can have the position. It's a volunteer position. It's a smaller level position. That said, you don't need any money to run, and you just need like some neighbors to back you. And then you can.
8 people. I'm sorry.
What is it? Well, 8 people is the council committee seat. This is a little bit bigger. This one you'll.
12?
No, not 12. No, you'll need a couple thousand people maybe for that, but it's something. Then you obviously have the assembly, the council, the state senate, and you need to have people at all those levels within the party as well as both parties, by the way, Republican and Democrat, because people who are Democrats need to participate so long as they are not insane. Right. You know, when you support policies that make your mom run away from the city, and I'm talking about AOC, her mom left New York City citing high taxes. Like when you support policies that make your mom run away, like consider being a better daughter. Like forget being a better congresswoman, just consider being a better daughter that don't drive your mom away.
So news just came out that a police officer from Georgia who had his taser taken, who shot a man, he's being charged with murder and is facing potentially life in prison. What's your take on this situation? Well,
if you look at the regulations for what cops are supposed to do, if somebody takes away your taser, you're supposed to, and tries especially to shoot, you're supposed to shoot him back because he can incapacitate you. and then take away your gun, and then do whatever he was going to do, because that's not a person that you can rely on to behave. If he was just behaving, there would be like a regular DWI, I think they call it DUI over there, case, and that would have been that. Like nobody would know that some guy get charged with DWI. The whole reason why this is happening, because he took down 2 police officers, he took away one of the tasers, and you're supposed to use force in that kind of situation to prevent him from incapacitating cops. It's obviously a show trial. It's obviously like we've all seen it. It's like it's an abuse of our intelligence of what's happening, because it's pure race baiting. I remember, what was it, like 1990, I think it was in the summer of 1990. I was in Ukraine, and there was a guy who decided to be an idiot and got a toy gun and came up to cops and pulled out a toy gun and decided to like have fun with it, you know? You know what they did? They pulled out their gun and shot him. And it was 1 block away from where my aunt lived, okay? Like they took it, like you want to play stupid games, you'll win stupid prizes, okay? You're gonna pull out a toy gun, and everyone's response, literally everyone's response was, well, how's the cop supposed to know what you're pulling out? Like it looks like a gun for a split second. They're not waiting until you actually press on the, you know. So what are you supposed to do with that? The trigger. What are you supposed to do in that situation as a cop? Somebody's firing at you, and by the way, the second cop, not the guy who lost his taser, but the guy who actually shot the criminal, and he is a criminal. DWI, the whole fighting with cops. I mean, we have it on tape that he's a criminal. What exactly are you supposed to do? You know that your partner just lost some kind of a weapon. In that whole situation, you don't know necessarily that it's a taser. You have dumbasses, like just dumb people suggesting things like, why don't you shoot at the guy's legs? Go to your local gun range and try to shoot 5 feet away. See how much you can hit it. You know how long it takes to actually, of course. Do you know how long, I have a place in Poconos. I go shooting like every weekend, right? I shot probably 100 times more than your average cop. It still takes an effort to actually hit a target. And by the way, one thing that you need to do when they train you to shoot is that you need to relax. Like your body needs to relax. If you tense up, your aim is going to be off. Well, you're going to tense up when somebody's shooting at you. So you have your partner lose some sort of a weapon. A second ago, that weapon is now being pointed at you. You don't know what that is. You don't know that it's not a gun. And by the way, if it's a taser, please, if you point a taser at me, I should have the right to shoot you.
Agree.
You know, it's the most ridiculous show trial that you can imagine. And all the dumb people who need to stop talking about shooting at people's legs. Go to a gun range one time, and you'll figure out how easy it is to shoot someone's leg.
But the police are not trained to do that. We were never trained to shoot.
You couldn't be trained to do that.
Right.
You're not a sniper.
No, we're not trained to shoot to kill. We're trained to stop the threat.
Yeah.
So we're not trained to aim at somebody's body because it's a smaller piece of the body.
One of the basic things they teach you when they teach you how to shoot is that you have to like get someone like somewhere, like just to stop the person who is shooting you, because you're not a sniper. You're not going to be able to. And by the way, even a sniper, he needs to be able to relax, get in a certain position, everything. Not when you are like halfway, like at a wrong angle, scared, tense, and everything else. There's no way to get it right. You'll never see even the best of snipers hit someone's leg in that kind of a situation where when his body is not properly positioned, when like that sniper is sitting there to hit the target, he is sitting in a very specific position. He's doing very specific things. What they're expecting is magic. It's not real life. It's like when you watch Superman or something and he starts flying. That's what they expect.
David, what is your opinion on the hypocrisy between the lockdown and the protests? For instance, no church services were allowed, no gyms were open, they were all closed, but the protests themselves that involved mass gatherings still occurred. Is there any legal consequences for the authorities?
Okay, so it was obviously unconstitutional because the Bill de Blasio literally said the difference between people of one type trying to do something, and the BLM protesters, looters, whatever, all combination of people, is 400 years of oppression. Well, the law bans that specifically. So if you're going to allow people to demonstrate for the least controversial thing, the least controversial, like cancer awareness, you have to let people march for anything else under the same standards. So when in 1972 a group of neo-Nazis wanted to march through a town of Skokie, which they found out has the highest proportion of Holocaust survivors in the United States. And so the Holocaust survivors were like, we don't want neo-Nazis screaming Hitler was right in our faces, right? And it went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, no, you have the right to march as a Nazi if you have the right to march as someone else. So the government cannot decide this viewpoint is good, this viewpoint is bad. That is blatantly unconstitutional. No judge, liberal or conservative, will disagree on that. No lawyer, liberal or conservative, will disagree with that. It's just that Bill de Blasio is a very low IQ individual who says stuff like that. But the reality is that this is completely, blatantly unconstitutional. So, and you have that at the same time, all those mass demonstrations of thousands of people. And then at the same time, when we had three politicians, all of them are Democrats, but all of them are moderate Democrats, Simcha Felder, Simcha Eichenstein, and Kalman Yeager. They went out and they demanded that they reopen playgrounds, that the city reopens playgrounds, and then they came up and then they just opened the playground. They broke the lock and they opened it. And it is legitimate civil disobedience because the law, as it was applied, is completely unconstitutional. You don't have to listen to unconstitutional laws. If somebody passes a law that we will have, concentration camps, that doesn't mean that you have to participate in concentration camps. This law is blatantly unconstitutional. It's also stupid because who's going to take a child to a playground? It's going to be the mom or the dad. So if you can live with your child, and if you can put your child in a chair in your house, and that's not dangerous, how is it going to be dangerous to put that child on a swing? It's still the same dad putting the same child on a swing. So it's obviously not dangerous. It's far less dangerous than when we have thousands of people joining for riots. But beyond that, even if it were dangerous, either we ban BLM or we, as well as shutting down playgrounds, as well as shutting down the anti-shutdown demonstrations, or we allow all of them. Constitutionally, there is no judge, there is no lawyer who will disagree with that. It's blatantly obvious that this is unconstitutional. So if somebody does something, they cannot prosecute you. Like, they may arrest you and they may screw around with you, and I understand people don't want to deal with that. But the reality is that when all is said and done, your case will be dismissed on constitutional grounds because the law is blatantly unconstitutional.
So we were talking about like this political change and what we can do, but we've also heard things about voting by mail, absentee ballots, stuff like that. But if the polls are open, like what is your stance on the voting by mail, and what does it cause? Does it cause a lot of chaos or whatever?
It's funny because when I was running, we organized a bunch of old people to vote by mail, and the average person was 87 years old among people whose absentee ballots we've collected. I mean, nobody is healthy at 87. Okay, like the average person was 87. I think the youngest was like 75, or something close to that. And the Democrats made a whole big stink about it. They had a recount in my case that lasted for 2 months because like, how dare they be voting by mail? Because we got people who are Republican to do that, right? Like a few of them voted against me, and we submitted those ballots, but we purposely targeted people who are going to be Republican. Like, why would we go to a place where they're going to vote against me? So they recognized that, and they were trying to go like, oh no, you cannot have voting by mail. This is a scheme to let people vote by mail. Like, it's not a scheme. They an average 87 years old. Okay, all people are allowed to do that so long as they're not so long as they're not in condition to actually vote. Incidentally, in particular with Russian old people, this is like their like big holiday to vote because they all dress up and they put on makeup and they get to see their friends that they see once a year or twice a year at elections. So like you cannot even force them to vote by mail. Like they will actually vote by mail because they cannot. They're trying to do it not with 87-year-olds. By the way, if an average one is 87, that means that there was 50% more than 87. They're trying to make it so that it's like 25-year-olds, 40-year-olds. The same people who go to a demonstration cannot show up to vote.
That's hypocrisy.
Everything is hypocrisy. Everything they do is hypocrisy.
So now we've seen this petition online to impeach de Blasio that has been signed, I don't know, about over 130,000 times. Can you put this myth to rest, if it's a myth that these petitions actually can drive any kind of change? What is the procedure and the reasons that a mayor, acting mayor or governor, can get impeached? For example, this bias with coronavirus lockdown, but yet protests are allowed to happen. Is that a legit enough reason to have a mayor impeached, for example?
Well, it would not be up to a referendum. This is not like California where the voters can just recall the governor. This is a different, we have different laws than California. It's not federal laws, it's obviously state laws that govern its own. But even if de Blasio just disappears, we'll have Jumaane Williams become mayor, which I don't think would be an upgrade. I think people would realize that it's actually worse of the two options. We have an election coming up in a little over a year for mayor. Republicans, I doubt, will have anyone serious running. There's talk of Curtis Lever running. Maybe he'll be okay. But almost certainly, the election is going to be over in June of next year, whenever the Democrats are going to be done with their primary. And we have two people running. One is Eric Adams, who's a former police officer, a captain actually. He's a liberal. I disagree with him on a lot of issues, but you can talk to him. And I met him when we were both state senators. You can talk to him, like you can explain to him certain things. And then there is Scott Stringer, and if he becomes mayor, you will wish Bill de Blasio was back, because Scott Stringer is like, yeah, I mean, you want to talk about an extremist, and that's a guy who would views that.
The comptroller. He's the comptroller.
Yeah, he's the controller right now, but his views are.
He's
running as a Republican. The problem is that New York City now is 7-1 Democrat. It used to be when Giuliani won 5-1 Democrat. And we had a crisis in New York. We had riots, we had all sorts of stuff happening. So at the time it was a little bit different. And let's remember, he won by a tiny margin. By a tiny margin at the time. He lost the first time when he ran, and then there was the Crown Heights riot. And everyone voted the same way except for Orthodox Jews, and that was the difference between him losing in '89 and winning in '93. Well, the difference now is that we have the city going from 5-1 Democrat to 7-1 Democrat. So how are you going to win a city with that much of a
Well, do you think
gap?
that the current set of events could change some people's minds, switch political
We had about
parties?
2,400 murders in 1990 or 1991. We still, I mean, we're probably going to have under 1,000 this year. So
Maybe more with them shifting.
I know, but it was like 300 something when Bloomberg left. So even if we are like at 3 times more than when the day Bloomberg left, we're still at about 1,000, which is less than half of what it was before. I mean, for anyone who remembers those years, I mean, you wouldn't get on the train at night, and if you would, there would be like the conductor card that would be like, it would just be marked and up, and that's the car that you would get into. And even during the day, you would not get into the first or the last car on the train, because those were the dangerous ones. And there was graffiti all over the train, and there was all sorts of stuff. You would walk in there and there was nothing but the smell of urine on the train. So when New York was in a much worse state than when Giuliani was running. And Giuliani also had a couple of other advantages. One being that he was a prosecutor who went after the Italian mob, being an Italian himself. So when he was going after criminals of all races, and they were saying, "Oh, Giuliani is racist." There was always a response that, "Well, was he racist when he went after Italian criminals?" No, he's not racist. He's going after criminals, whatever criminals happen to be. I don't know who we have who's on par with Giuliani. Like who is that person who would be that?
Sliwa, because he's from the Guardian Angels. I think he would be the most.
Look, if he can be that, that's wonderful. But it's Giuliani doesn't win today in 1993 with today's demographics. Let's just take Bay Ridge. Bay Ridge was something like 80-20 for Giuliani at the time. Whoever is going to be the next Republican candidate, Sliwa or whoever else, is probably going to lose Bay Ridge. And that's one of the many neighborhoods that turned from very conservative to very liberal.
You know, there's a lot of people leaving New York. Obviously, with the current climate, whatever. And, you know, as we just discussed, and there's also the people that are staying are fearful for their lives. A lot of people have been talking to us about, you know, gun control laws in New York City, the most strictest in the country, pretty much. You know, to get a carry permit. You know, what do you think is a way for New York to loosen those gun control laws?
Well, right now it's going to be in the other direction because you have, for the first time in a long time, Democrats dominate the government at all levels. Because we had Democrats in power from 2008 to 2010 to the same degree. But at the time, the state Senate Democrats were in complete disarray. So they were not able, like literally were not able to function as a governing body. Like it was just a lot of infighting. They didn't have the staff of people who can run the Senate because they would have their own staff like in the senator's office, but not like the people who actually like run the Senate. Like the secretary of the Senate and like all the non-elected people, like the clerks. And so because it was such a disaster for the Democrats those 2 years, they weren't actually able to do any damage. But now it's completely one-sided. The Republicans are wiped out. The Republicans didn't lose a little bit. Republicans went from having a majority to being down almost 2-1 in the state Senate in one election. In one election, they went from a majority of 1 to down almost 2-1. So I don't know what can be done. Democrats have just this foolproof majority.
Is it just getting people out there to vote, maybe to vote Republican because they're sick of Democrat, maybe?
Honestly, it should be even before that. We need to rebuild Republican parties, and we need to rebuild the Republican Party at all levels. Like actually have people walk in and start doing stuff, to become your district leader, become your whatever leader, become something, organize a club, organize a group of people who will do stuff in your neighborhood and recruit people, go and register people in the Republican Party, go do stuff at the most basic organizational level, because the idea that you will have an effect doesn't do anything. The other part is that you need to have some level of media influence, which is easier now than ever before. So you can start a local blog with the local news. You can start some issue-related blog. You can run a YouTube channel. You can do all sorts of stuff that
Facebook group like
Facebook groups, you know. But you need to, yeah, exactly. But all of this is media. Like this is how you can, like it's social media is media. That's why it's called that. You need to do all, but not you, just you. It cannot be one Facebook group and that's it. That's not running the government. There has to be a march through institutions that the left has had for 60 years. We do not have 60 years because this nation will collapse given the way it's headed. But we need to have a march through institutions. Whatever institutions that we can create or invade or whatever else, whether it's social media, regular media, blogs, education, businesses, there has to be a march through institutions, you know, and one person cannot do all of it. You can create your Facebook group and that's all you can do because you have a job and you have a family and all of that stuff. And somebody else has to be a district leader and somebody else has to do whatever is it that they can do, you know. Maybe you can fundraise for someone and now they kind of owe you. You know, and now when you pick up the phone and you call them, they owe you enough to at least listen to you. And that costs a lot of money if you're trying to influence the president of the United States. You can throw a $2,000 fundraiser for like a local politician and he will at least listen to you. Maybe he will not do as you say, because you're not, but at least there will be a voice and sometimes he will do what you say. Like, and it's not anything massive, but there has to be some kind of some kind of an involvement. I'm not talking about corruption where you give him money and he does what you say, but you have to you have to play the game to be able to win prizes. You're not going to win the lottery if you never bought a lottery ticket, which don't buy lottery tickets. But you know, that's the point, that you cannot sit there and whine about, oh well, whatever, everything is horrible, and then what? And okay, everything is horrible. What'd you do to make it not horrible? It's like, I have kids. Okay, everyone else has kids also. Good. What are you gonna do?
David, thank you so much on behalf of our group, Standing Up for New York City. In conclusion, if you could give people one call to action, what kind of action would you call for them to take? Except bullying.
Register a few of your friends and see if somebody is actually willing to run for something somewhere. You know, because
You should get back in it.
yeah, I've already done my part.
Thank you.